I'm Ron Glotzball from Purdue University. This presentation is on embedding AI literacy within technical coursework, an instructional design approach. To start, AI is everywhere. It's invaded most parts of our lives. It is already a part of student work. They use it for things that we may not even realize they use it for: coding, writing, problem solving. Um, they are often using it outside the classroom for structured instruction. Traditional response has been limited. Policies and restrictions dominate the discussion of how AI should be handled. AI is being treated as a separate issue. So the instructional challenge becomes, how do we teach with AI instead of keeping it separate as a separate issue? How do we integrate it and teach with it? The central instructional design question: how should AI literacy be integrated into coursework? That's an interesting question to pose and look at. Keeping it separate can keep the ideas and learning separated from one another, whereas embedding it within the course can help us use it as part of the learning. So the proposed direction becomes embedding the AI directly into the disciplinary work, rather than having it separate where students may not connect directly to real tasks with it. AI literacy is not a separate skill. It shouldn't be taught in isolation, because each subject matter that you use it for has its own nuances, so it needs to be tied to the disciplinary context. So instructional design needs to adapt with that and consider how AI shapes student thinking. You need to take into consideration design iterations, not just the content. So the focus shifts from tool awareness to the learning process. AI affects how students think. It suggests solutions and next steps. It changes problem-solving approaches. AI shapes perceptions of expertise. Students may defer to AI outputs instead of means that they had used in the past to determine their own outputs. It reduces independent evaluation. So the instructional implication is that it must design how students interact with AI within our classes. In defining AI literacy, it's not just technical understanding. It goes beyond how AI works. It includes interpretation and judgment of what we get from AI. The core components include evaluating the AI output. That's important to help teach our students. And recognizing the limitations and bias. Our instructional role includes developing habits and questioning and verifying that output. The risk of doing it without design becomes over-reliance on AI. Students will accept the output without evaluating what the output is. That's not good for us. You may have reduced engagement with the concepts. You may have loss of disciplinary thinking. AI replaces parts of the learning process in that instance, and it weakens understanding. So our instructional gap becomes apparent. AI use becomes invisible and unstructured. And if it's invisible in our learning, and we as instructors cannot identify where AI has been used, that becomes a serious problem. So our instructional design response is to structure AI interaction. We need to require evaluation and revision of AI interaction and make the AI use visible. So we're going to shift the focus from content delivery to interaction design. We're going to shift it from answers to reasoning, with the goal being to preserve disciplinary rigor while using artificial intelligence. To put this into a course context, what I used here was an undergraduate web development course. It focuses on relational databases and structured query language. It teaches core technical skill development. The traditional assignment that we used involved create, insert, select, update, and delete statements. Those are all some domain knowledge for structured query language. And the students all write the SQL manually. They write those statements manually. And then they place those into MySQL to execute them. The limitation is there's no structured engagement. There's no structured engagement with AI. So I performed an assignment redesign where I added a structured AI component. I did not replace the existing assignment. I kept the original assignment where they had to do it on their own, but I extended it. My key principle was that AI is going to be integrated, not avoided. It's not going to be invisible. Students are not going to use it without our knowledge. Instead, it's going to be intentional, and we're going to see how they're using it. So the design goal was to maintain rigor while introducing AI literacy. The structure of my assignment had 3 parts. Parts 1 and 2 were the foundational work, the previous assignment. Students create and manipulate tables manually. They write those select, insert, update, delete statements. They interact with the MySQL database management system. They develop that core structured query language, understand it. And then part 3 was AI integration. Students use AI to extend their work, but they have to document and verify their outputs. So in doing so, they have to provide us with documentation of what their prompts were and how they modified their prompt and what the result was that was given back to them by AI. Sequencing matters. AI comes after foundational knowledge. So the AI prompting task. Students prompt the AI to create a new table. It must include some constraints like primary keys and relationships, and it must align with the existing schema. They ask AI to generate some SQL statements for that table, insert data, update that data, delete the data, select what's left. The AI output is not necessarily final. It has to be tested and verified. The AI output has to be put into MySQL and executed, and then verified that what was written worked correctly. So as I said, students execute that AI in MySQL. They run those queries through an interface called PHPMyAdmin. It identifies errors and inconsistencies, and if corrections are required, the students need to fix those syntax issues so that it aligns with relational database design principles. The learning outcome is that AI exposes gaps in understanding. The documentation requirement is that students submit their prompts to the AI. They'll create a Word document and place their prompts into the Word document. They show how they structure their requests, and it makes their thinking visible to us, instructors. They submit generated and revised structured queries. They compare original versus corrected output and highlight the changes. And the instructional value becomes that prompting becomes a design activity, and prompting becomes visible to us. We see it happen. Instructional purpose is to reinforce SQL competency. Students must still understand database logic. AI does not replace knowledge. We develop AI literacy. Students have to evaluate those outputs. The SQL statement might be misformed. Perhaps it's not written quite correctly, and they need to know and understand that. They need to understand how to change it and make it work correctly. And in that AI literacy, it'll help identify limitations of the AI. Through all this, we encourage reflection on how AI influences their work. So as part of the assignment, there's also a reflection at the end, where students have to think about how they first did the assignment without AI, and then added the third component of artificial intelligence, and then discuss how prompting the AI worked and how they had to modify their prompts, and if and whether they had to modify the output that came from AI. So again, AI is introduced after the foundational work. This prevents substitution of learning and supports scaffolding. For instructor modeling, it demonstrates prompt quality differences, and it emphasizes constraints on how the students have to progress through. We produce a controlled environment where there are clear expectations for AI use. We want them to use it, but we want them to use it in the proper sequence, and we want how they use it to be visible to us. And there is verification required of what prompts they wrote, the iterations of those prompts, the output of those prompts, and if it worked correctly and how they fixed it. The assessment approach includes grading focused on correctness. So the SQL must function properly. That is what we need them to learn. Database principles have to be enforced. AI use is not graded directly. What matters here is the quality of the reasoning. It's not whether AI was used, it was how it was used, how it was prompted, and how the students learned from it and reflected on it. The documentation supports the evaluation. It makes student thinking visible to the instructor. As a key design insight, AI output is plausible, but it may not be perfect. It can often contain errors. They might be small, they might be glaring. It can and often does require correction for anyone who's tried to use it to write code at times. It will give you some beautiful code, but it may not do what you wanted it to do. Learning happens in revision. Students debug and refine, and they engage with the concepts. The instructional takeaway becomes AI becomes a learning catalyst. The implications for instructional design are that AI is embedded into the coursework. We're not isolating it as a separate topic. It's becoming part of the disciplinary tasks. We are designing for interaction. We require evaluation of and revision of the AI output. And we are making the AI use visible. Our focus is on process. Learning occurs through engagement, not just final output. Faculty implications include a lower barrier to adoption. We can modify existing assignments instead of a full course redesign. We can maintain instructional control, define boundaries for the AI use, and keep our learning objectives central. From a practical implication standpoint, this is scalable across disciplines. Our key takeaways are that AI literacy must be embedded, not taught separately, and grounded in the discipline. Instructional design is critical, determines how AI is used, and shapes learning outcomes. Structure matters. The sequencing of it, the verification of it matters, so that we can ensure meaningful learning. So in closing, AI is already a part of the learning environment. Students will continue to use it. Instructors will continue to use it. The question is not whether to allow it, but how to structure its use. Instructional design determines learning. AI does not replace teaching, it shapes it. We have the references from the paper here. And I thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.